Right, here we are again. I'm recording from my studio side. There's too much noise there where I normally record. Um, so, where are we? We are busy with, the Judges. In chapter 22, we spoke about Samson, if I remember correctly, as one of the judges, and how he struggled and eventually how he was able to kill a lot of Philistines, but he had a very hectic life and not a life that I think God was very pleased with, but he was God's person, and God helped him on his way to do what he needed to do, God's plan, as we need to do God's plan also every day. Sometimes we do the wrong thing, but God will pick us up again and take us back on the road so that we can carry on. So, we are still looking at the Judges, and we are carrying on with the rest of the Judges, and the next person is Ruth. The story begins in the time of the Judges when Eliméleg lived in Bethlehem. So, due to a severe famine in the land, Eliméleg and his wife Naomi and their two sons Maglon and Giljon moved to Moab. So, drought, famine, so they moved. When they got there, at some point, Eliméleg died, and later Maglon and Giljon married Moabite women. And they were called Orpa and Ruth. So Eliméleg and Naomi, who lived now in Moab, their sons married Moabite women, which was not what God wanted. God wanted them to marry their own woman, but this is how it happened. And we'll see how good that worked out. So Orpa and Ruth was Moabite woman married to the two sons. And when the two sons died eventually, they left Ruth with her two daughters-in-law. So this is very bad, because normally if you were in your own family, in your own country, amongst your own people, there will be somebody there who will look after you when your husband died. Or, in the case, sometimes it would be your sons-in-law if they are married to your daughters. They will look after the family. But now, she had nobody, only the two daughters-in-law. They heard that the famine in Canaan was over, and so Naomi decided to go back home to Bethlehem. And of course, the daughters-in-law had nowhere to go, so they went with her. And they started the journey with her. But Naomi urged them to go back to their own people, because there will be nothing for them in Canaan. Nobody to look after them, and they will be a burden on her also. Orpa returned back to her people, but Ruth refused, declaring, "Do not urge me to leave you or to turn back from you, for where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. I will go with you to your people, and not return to my people. Your God will be my God." So they learned about her God, about Naomi's God. So she decided she will go with her and accept her God as well. So Naomi and Ruth were very poor when they returned to Bethlehem, but they decided to glean, which means to collect leftover grain from those who would be in the fields and collect, cut their own grain and bring it, get it together and put it in the storerooms. So gleaning was accepted. So you walk behind these guys who cut the corn or the grain, and they were allowed to pick up the little bits and pieces that was left over. It was permitted under God's law. Now she happened to work on the fields of Boaz, a very wealthy relative of the family. And Boaz was very kind to her, allowing her to glean a large amount of grain. So now what happened was, when they arrived, Naomi was old, so she sent Ruth to the fields to do the gleaning. And Boaz was very kind to Ruth, and to allow her to pick up the leftovers. So Naomi then advised Ruth to ask Boaz to serve as her kinsman or redeemer. In those days, it would be a family member, the closest family member. So according to the law, a close relative had a duty to redeem lost family land and marry a relative widow if that person died. And if that person would be childless, and that person would then look after them. So Boaz discovered there was a relative closer than he was, but that relative then declined to look after Naomi and Ruth. So Boaz then fulfilled the role and married Ruth. They had a son named Obed, and Obed was the father of Isai, who was the father of David, the later great king of Israel. And if you then go further back into the descendants of David, we know that Jesus, our Redeemer, Messiah, would be born from the descendants of David. So this is where it all started. And Ruth was not even an Israelite. She was a Moabite, who then, through this whole setup, married Boaz, who was the closest family member eventually. And their sons then, from his sons, David was born, and later in this descendants, it was Jesus who was born. So, we now move into the period of Samuel. So we know Samuel was a great prophet, one of God's prophets. It was in a time when the Philistines oppressed Israel. The Philistines was based on the coastal plains on the west coast of Canaan, and they had 5 major cities, Gaza and so on. And they had a very feared army, was greatly feared. The oppression helped to turn the people back to the service of the Lord. So again, remember what we said. Oppressed, then they turned back to God. And Eli was the priest in Shiloh, where the tabernacle stood. And he was also the judge of the people. So in those times, Eli, the prophet of the Lord, was the judge. However, he failed to address the serious sins of his sons. His sons, Hophni and Phinehas, profaned the tabernacle. They were very bad guys. And so he did not, he saw it, but did nothing about it, and it really displeased the Lord. So Samuel's father was, before his birth, his father was Elkanah. He had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. And Hannah, though she was dearly loved was childless. And she was often taunted by Peninnah, who had many children. So Hannah prayed earnestly to the Lord. She went to the tabernacle in Shiloh, and she promised the Lord that if he gave her a son, she would dedicate this son to him. Eli initially thought, when she was praying softly there in a corner, that she was drunk, but still he blessed her. Hannah then conceived and named the boy Samuel, yes, meaning through God's hearing. So God heard her and gave her a son. Well, as promised, Samuel was brought up to serve at the tabernacle as a boy. One night, when he was sleeping there, this is now, remember, he was not, when he was a boy, meaning when he was, I would say 10 to 12 years old, because his mother looked after him before that. But then his mother took him to the tabernacle and gave him to Eli to use in God's service. One night, the Lord called Samuel by name 3 times, or a few times. And Eli helped Samuel to recognize that it was the Lord speaking to him and not him, Eli, who was calling him. The Lord's message to Samuel announced a severe judgment against Eli and his sons. And this must have been very difficult for this little boy to hear God saying that he is going to destroy Eli and his sons and his house because of their sins, predicting that his sons would die on the same day. And when that happened, when Eli heard that his sons died, he fell off his chair and he broke his neck. So they all died on the same day. Israel went to war against the Philistines and lost. They retrieved the Ark of Covenant from Shiloh, believing it would ensure victory, forgetting that the Lord only helps those who do not worship idols. And this is what Israel did. I mean, they just took the box of covenant, the Ark of Covenant. They just took it, believing that it was this box, this Ark, who would make them win. It's like an idol to them. They don't believe God would help them. They lost the battle, and the Ark was captured. 30,000 Israelite soldiers died, as well as Hophni and Phinehas. And then when Eli heard the news, he obviously fell backwards and died. The Philistines placed the Ark in the temple of their god, Dagon. Twice the Dagon statue was found fallen over, with nobody doing it, just it happened. God made it happen. The second time, its head and hands were broken off while it fell over. The Philistines were afflicted with serious plagues, tumors and also mice and all kinds of things. And they eventually realized it must have been the Ark, and they returned the Ark to Israel, placing it on a new wagon drawn by cows that were directly, that went straight to Bethshemesh. However, 70 men in Bethshemesh died because they looked into the Ark. The Ark was finally housed in the house of Abinadab in Kirjat Jearim until David later brought it to Jerusalem, much later, many years later. So it stood there for a long time in the house of Abinadab. Right, so Samuel continued to act as judge, guiding the people back to the Lord. After 20 years, the Israelites gathered in Mizpah. When the Philistines attacked, the Lord intervened with a great thunderstorm, defeating them. Samuel set up a stone called Ebenezer, meaning stone of help. For thus far the Lord has helped us. When Samuel grew old, his sons Joel and Abiah judged improperly and took bribes. So you see, here it happens again. The elders requested that Samuel appoint a king for them, just like all the other nations. They were now tired of judges and who would judge for a while and then, that's the end of it. Samuel was very displeased, realizing that the people had rejected the Lord God as their king. It was supposed to be God looking after his people, as their king. But they were not happy, and they wanted a worldly king, somebody who lives amongst them and would be their king. The Lord instructed Samuel to listen to them, but to warn them clearly about the heavy burdens, the taxes, the servitude that a king would impose. So an earthly king, worldly king, would not be as lenient as God. So despite the warning, the people insisted, and the Lord recommended or commanded Samuel to appoint a king. So next time we will look at this appointed king, or the king who will be appointed, and it will be Samuel's job to do that as God's representative. Not a happy situation. God wasn't happy. Samuel was very unhappy because he wanted the people of Israel to realize who their real king was, God. And the Israelites were his people. But as they were going in the wrong direction all the time, this was just another wrong direction. And God warned them about the difficulties they were going to face. But they were happy to do it. So we'll see what happens. So that's it for today. I will, God willing, see you tomorrow. And you must sleep tight. Remember, Orpa and Rut love you too. And I will see you tomorrow. Sleep tight. Ciao, ciao.